Hey, Fable.
Hi.
How's it going? How are you doing?
I'm doing pretty good.
Great.
First year of 8th grade.
First year of 8th grade?
Yep.
First year of 8th grade. That doesn't make sense.
No, it doesn't. What? First full week of 8th grade.
First full week of 8th grade. Oh, that's so fun. I spent the best 3 years of my life in the 8th grade. Sorry. That was a joke my dad used to tell me and that I always thought was not very funny, and then I just used it. So, Fable, what do you know about the Bermuda Triangle?
Really not that much. All I've learned is to not go in it.
That's probably pretty good advice.
Yeah, that's probably a good idea.
Welcome to Lightcatchers, a storytelling podcast for kids who can find the good in the bad, the beautiful in the ugly, and the light in the darkness. This season, we're following the adventures of Bob the Bad Pirate, a pirate who is not very good at being a pirate. So if you're ready, sit back, kick up your feet, and come catch the light with me. Far away, across the high seas on the furthest edge of the Caribbean, sailed the infamous Bob the Bad Pirate. Every day, when the dawn spread over the waters and the sailors rose from their quarters in the hull of the great wooden ship, Bob the Bad Pirate stood atop the mast and yelled, "Arg, 'tis a great day for pirating." Whenever Bob shouted this, the rest of the crew spat upon the deck and cheered. There was nothing more exciting to a crew of pirates than a day of pirating. And Bob and his crew loved to pirate.
Everybody sing along!
So give us gold and give us silver, give us jewels to fill our souls. Give us every day a sliver of the beauty we behold, 'cause we are pirates through and through. And we will be till we die, so give us treasure, sure and true, till we meet the by and by.
That morning, when Bob stepped down from the mast after rousing his crew, he heard a loud, "Achoo!"
Shiver me timbers and gazoon-tight!
Bob said, looking around to see where it came from. Louder this time. Bob turned around to find Zoey, the first mate, with her head in her elbow and a bit of water in her eyes.
Are you okay, Zoey? That was a mighty loud sneeze for such an early morning.
Bob walked over to her as Polly the pigeon flew off to try and peck bugs out of the hair of the other pirates. "My nose is just a little stuffy," Zoey replied, trying to sound normal. "I think I'll be, Zoey sat down. She was trying to put on a brave face, but everything felt a little bit off. Bob took his time trying to sit down beside her. Zoey rubbed her elbows across her nose as a slight shiver went down her back.
Zoey, I'd bet the hair on the back of a howling hyena that you're a little bit sick,"
Bob said. "I can push through it. We're right near the Bermuda Triangle, and I don't want to, Zoey had never taken a sick day as a pirate and didn't want to let her crew down.
"Don't you worry, Zoey. I'll take the helm and navigate these treacherous waters. You go and rest your head and get yourself feeling better."
For reasons that should be obvious by now, Zoey did not feel good about leaving Bob to navigate treacherous waters on his own. But she didn't have a choice. She could barely make it down the stairs into her quarters without needing a break. The other pirates were concerned, both for Zoey's health and for the implications of Zoey's absence. Silver-eyed Sylvia and one-legged Lori followed her down to make sure she had what she needed to get better: a rabbit's foot, rum soup, and a book titled Treasure Hunting for Dummies. Pequeño Pedro and Colossus Klaus jumped up to help Bob, who was holding the map upside down.
"I always look at the map upside down first, to make sure I know how far we've gone,"
Bob said, as they helped him turn it over.
Of course, that is definitely how maps work,
Colossus Klaus said, as he turned the map the right way and handed it back to Bob.
"As long as we keep this bearing, we will avoid the Bermuda Triangle and be in the Bahamas by nightfall."
Pequeño Pedro had his hand on the helm and locked it into place as a caution against Bob's well-meaning navigation. Many ships lost themselves in the Bermuda Triangle. It was an unsolved mystery no one wanted to solve. Of course, every sailor was curious, and there were plenty of stories told to explain the disappearances. But in the end, the only way to know why ships disappeared was to go into the Bermuda Triangle. And no ships came out. You might think avoiding the Bermuda Triangle would be simple, since every person who ever stepped foot on a boat knew where it was. But it was a tight path between where the strong southerly wind stopped blowing and the mysterious current that seemed to draw ships further and further in began. If you go too far away from the Bermuda Triangle, your ship will be met with a windless sea. If you get too close, the cursed pull will draw you toward an end unknown. Of course, Zoey didn't plan on getting sick, but it was exceptionally bad timing, and the rest of the crew felt uneasy as Bob stood at the helm, staring through his looking glass backwards. Pequeño Pedro and Colossus Klaus were uneasy as well, but they did love the Bermuda Triangle. Every time they were near it, they got to sing their favorite song. By lunchtime, the crew was feeling better. The wind was strong and the course stayed steady, thanks to Pequeño Pedro locking the wheel earlier. Bob busied himself by looking at the map from different directions and declaring periodically that he may have discovered new lands. Different crew members went down to check on Zoey while she slept. By early afternoon, they expected to see the faint sign of the Bahamas in the distance and hear the cawing of seagulls as they got closer to land. Despite its danger, this was a common route for Bob the Bad Pirate's crew, one that Zoey could practically navigate in her sleep. When they didn't see the distant islands at first, they just assumed their internal clocks were slightly off. Pirates don't wear watches. I wouldn't know how to read a clock even if they did have watches. As time went on, though, an unsettled feeling washed over the ship. Bob the Bad Pirate put his scope out backwards and yelled out,
Still nothing! Must be further than we thought.
Colossus Klaus and Pequeño Pedro went to the helm to see what happened. The first thing they noticed was that the wheel was unlocked, and Polly the pigeon was pecking directly beneath the locking mechanism.
Oh, Captain, who unlocked the wheel?
Colossus Klaus asked, trying to remain respectful.
Oh, that thing? I had to move it so Polly could get to some wheat falling in the cracks. I know, I spoil her, but I can't help myself.
Bob held his hand out to Polly the pigeon, who ignored it and kept pecking. Klaus and Pedro looked at each other and then out to the crew. They noticed the wind starting to die down and the ship slowing.
Don't worry about the helm. I've been adjusting the wheel based on some new map angles, and I believe we'll be there in no time.
Bob the Bad Pirate now stood at the helm with his tongue slightly out. Sometimes the reality of a situation doesn't sink in right away. Bob the Bad Pirate was in fact the captain and could control the wheel at any time. So Pequeño Pedro and Colossus Klaus didn't push back on his plan. And even if they weren't exactly on track, they weren't being drawn in by an unexplainable current. The wind had slowed but hadn't stopped. Maybe everything was going to be okay.
The truth is, if you look at the map from the right side and cross your eyes slightly, there looks to be a whole new set of islands behind us. So I've been slowly turning the ship around to discover what new worlds await.
This was bad news. Turning a ship around without a reference point is near impossible, even for a seasoned pirate. Colossus Klaus and Pequeño Pedro looked to their right and then to their left. They felt the last breath of wind die and watched as the sails went slack. They looked at each other and then at Bob. Finally, Colossus Klaus spoke.
My captain, I do believe we be lost.
News spread quickly through a pirate ship. When you're at sea for as long as pirates, you run out of things to talk about within a few days. Anything new, like a pirate getting a haircut, an unknown treasure being discovered, or a captain accidentally getting lost next to the Bermuda Triangle, was bound to be the topic of conversation for the crew. At first, the crew was excited to hear something new. But the excitement quickly waned when they realized they were stopped with no land in sight. They dropped their mops and their ropes. They laid down their swords and their rum. They looked to the sea and then back at the helm, and all began to gather by the stairs, wondering how Bob the Bad Pirate would save them. Bob knew he messed up. He was deeply curious, and often followed his curiosity without always thinking about the consequences. He always appreciated Zoey, but he didn't realize just how much he depended on her. Bob felt the sadness and the fear as he looked at his crew gathering. He knew they needed him, but he didn't know if he had what it takes to help them.
Sir, are we lost?
One pirate asked from the back.
Do we have a plan, Captain?
Another asked at the front. They all loved Bob, but it was hard for them to not grow frustrated. Before more questions were asked, Bob lifted his hat and decided to address his crew.
Mateys, when I asked each of you to sail with me, I knew I was taking on the responsibility of leading you. I love our adventures, and I know there are rarely mistakes made on this boat.
Colossus Klaus coughed and looked around, giving everyone that don't say anything eyes. Bob continued.
However, I know that I made a mistake here. My curiosity got us all turned around, and now...
Bob sighed.
I don't know where we are.
There was a brief silence, and then another pirate asked, while hanging with one hand from the rope of the mast, "So does that mean we're lost, Captain?" Bob thought for a moment. Polly the pigeon landed on his shoulder, and the sun sent a reflection off the water and onto his hat, almost like a spotlight.
Lost is an interesting word,
Bob said.
I don't know where we are, but I would not say that we're lost.
As he said this, he grabbed the guitar he always kept by the helm, began to play a song his mother and father would sing to him as they rocked him to sleep as a young boy.
The sea is rising all around you. The wind has stopped, the future's bleak. The fear is growing all around you. The sky is filled with stars you've never seen. But don't you worry about the future. However long our time may be, 'cause we've got love that lasts forever, and love is stronger than the sea. Oh, you're never lost at sea when you're with your family. Though the waves may break, they won't break us apart. And even if you feel alone, you're never too far to come home. Don't be afraid, this love will guide you through the dark. So hold your head up and let your hair down. Let raging waters turn the tide. You won't regret the journey onward if you'll just put your hand in mine. Oh, you're never lost at sea when you're with your family. Though the waves may break, they won't break us apart. Even if you feel alone, you're never
too far to come home. Don't be afraid, this love will guide you through the dark. The pirate crew sat quiet. The clouds hid the sun as it descended toward the horizon. They heard the sound of the gentle waves as they pulsed against the hull. They felt the warmth of belonging, and for a good, sweet moment, felt at home without fear. Bob looked back at Colossus Klaus and Pequeño Pedro, who both had tears in their eyes before looking back out at his crew. Polly the pigeon was trying to pick a bug out of her own wing.
I am going to check on Zoey. When I return, we row!
The crew sent out a cheer at the idea of rowing, and then continued in their reverie of the moment. Below deck, he could hear the faint sound of slow breathing. Zoey had beads of sweat on her forehead as she slept, and Bob felt to make sure the fever was breaking. He wished Zoey's father, the great pirate Silverton, could have been with him to take care of her. Her mother was lost after giving birth, and Zoey became the greatest treasure her father ever found. Silverton loved her and died protecting her when he fought the seven-headed monster of the seven seas. Bob missed her father and always worried that he would never give Zoey the life her father would have given her. She was Silverton's treasure, and Bob knew that his only real job as a pirate was to care for Silverton's treasure with everything he had. For all the fierceness Zoey possessed, Bob looked at her sleeping and can only see the little girl he held crying after the great battle of the seven seas. Though it was something he never planned, he knew that she was the reason he never felt lost in the world. She became the family he thought he'd never have. And if you're wondering where we're going, truth is I'm just as scared as you. But I know fear won't overwhelm me, 'cause I will face that fear with you. Bob sat for a moment longer in the quiet, letting his memories wash over him like waves on the gentle sloping sand. After a minute, he felt a slight itch on his back. Bob knew he couldn't wake Zoey to ask for help, so he proceeded to just rub his back against one of the posts in the middle of the room.
Get it.
When he started to scratch his back by going up and down against the post, the strangest thing happened. Every time he moved, a strong, creaking sound went through the ship. He always thought he was extraordinarily strong, but even this surprised him. He whispered,
You've still got it, Bob. Jumping jack-o'-lanterns on a Tuesday night. You still got it.
Then the ship shuddered. Bob heard a commotion on the deck and realized he wasn't the one moving the ship. Something else was happening. Because so many things were happening at once, it is hard to describe the scene Bob hobbled into when he climbed back onto the deck. The first thing he noticed was how tilted the ship was. It looked as though it was gliding along the edge of a wave. He had to grab a rope to make it to the deck. All of the pirates were sliding and running, and grabbing the mast or oars to try and correct what was happening. The sea tossed water upon the deck, sending mist and drops over the entire crew. At the helm, Colossus Klaus was trying to steer the ship in the opposite direction it was turning, while Pequeño Pedro yelled out commands from the railing of the poop deck. Polly the pigeon flew from pirate to pirate, trying to get just one bug from their hair. It was chaos, and Bob knew that they were in trouble.
We're in trouble.
But he didn't realize just how much trouble they were in until he turned around. Through the mist and the chaos, beyond the bow, Bob saw what looked like a perfect circle in the water. Its edges were sloped and almost looked peaceful. If you've ever seen a bath drain, then you've seen what Bob was looking at. The sudden shift that he felt below deck And the strong current they now found themselves in were the effects of a giant whirlpool in the middle of the Bermuda Triangle. Despite Bob's lack of sea legs, he got to the helm as fast as he could. Colossus Klaus was still holding on, trying to steer it out of the cyclone. Pequeño Pedro was still shouting out to grab the line or batten the hatches. Though everything seemed hopeless, they all worked and fought like true pirates. Bob tapped Colossus Klaus and yelled,
I'll take it from here, matey.
Had Klaus thought about it for a second more, he probably would have had Bob do something else. But Bob was his captain, and he was a good pirate. Once Bob's hands were on the helm, Colossus Klaus let go. If you're wondering if Colossus Klaus's nickname was ironic, as is the case with some pirates, then be assured his name was duly earned. Colossus Klaus was at least twice the size of every pirate on the ship, and was often found lifting entire rowboats over his head for fun, or participating in boulder throwing contests in Tortuga. When Bob the Bad Pirate took over the helm from Colossus Klaus, the round wheel spun him off his feet and sent him flying to the port side. His right shoe flew off his foot and hit Polly the pigeon. As Polly fell, she grabbed onto the frayed rope, holding the mast in place with her beak, which broke the rope and let the mast loose. With the helm and mast loose, the ship launched forward, knocking everyone back and onto the deck. There was a moment of quiet as they looked around to figure out what happened. But then they saw the whirlpool. They were moving faster than they ever had and felt the centrifugal force as they entered the curve of the water. All of them, at that moment, prepared for the end. Bob shouted,
Hold on, mateys. We go down with the ship if we go down at all.
They all grabbed the starboard side as the ship turned more and more into the edge of the whirlpool. They were going very fast and could see through the whirlpool down to the bottom of the ocean, where the wreckage of ships long lost rested upon the ocean floor. They were all very brave and accepted this as a worthy end for the adventures of great pirates. They knew songs would be sung of them, murals painted, tales told. What they didn't understand was how basic physics worked. Most ships, when approaching the whirlpool in the middle of the Bermuda Triangle, tried to do what Colossus Klaus did. They tightened the mast and sails and turned the rudder away. Unfortunately, all this does is slow the ship down and make the ship powerless against the current. When Bob let go of the helm and accidentally put in motion a series of events that cut the sails free, the ship sped up in the approach. Instead of getting sucked down into the whirlpool, the curve of the water and the speed of the ship acted more like a boomerang. This is why, within seconds of entering the whirlpool and accepting their fate, they found themselves whipped around the far side, launched out of the whirlpool, and flying through the air away from the danger. They flew for a long time. All of the pirates felt weightless and confused. Bob looked at the faces of his mates, and then at Polly the pigeon, and then behind the ship. He saw the whirlpool get smaller and noticed a flock of seagulls flying and the sun beginning its descent on the horizon. If Bob was a painter, it would have been the scene he spent his whole life trying to paint. It was beautiful. Bob looked again at his crew while he tried to reach behind him to scratch his back.
It's still there.
Before he felt the weight of the water and the movement of the ship collide. A larger, heavier ship would have broken apart, but Bob's nimble ship handled the landing as though it was made to fly. For a few seconds, there was silence. The pirates looked down at their bodies to check and see if they were still real. The seagulls they flew by were now high above them. Polly the pigeon shook the water off her as she pecked at her own feathers. Bob the Bad Pirate looked back at Colossus Klaus and Pequeño Pedro and began to smile. Bob's smile spread across the ship. The smile turned to a laugh, The laugh turned into hugs, and the hugs turned into tears as each pirate realized what happened. Bob the Bad Pirate was the first pirate to enter the Bermuda Triangle and make it out the other side. On that day, a legend passed down for centuries was born. In the midst of the celebrations and cheering, Zoey stepped onto the deck. She still had a blanket wrapped around her, and her hair looked like a Polly the Pigeon nest. One side of her body was soaked through, and her movement was shuffled and slow. The strangest thing just happened to me, Zoey said to Bob as she walked up beside him. Bob jumped at the sight of her.
Broccoli and cauliflower, where did you come from?
Zoey still spoke slowly, as though she awoke from a deep dream. I was dreaming, I think. In my dream, I was walking through the streets of Tortuga. You were there. My father was there. I was little, I think. As we walked, I felt the ground shift to the right, further and further until I felt myself fall. Everyone was falling, and somehow wet. Nobody spoke, and you and my father just smiled at me. Before I could ask a question, though, we all began to float in the air. It felt like we floated forever. And then, I felt this jarring movement, and I woke up. I was on the wet floor, in my blanket, and I heard cheering and laughter. Bob didn't know what to say. He didn't want her to worry, but knew she probably needed to hear the story.
Well, Zoey!
But before Bob could tell her, Zoey looked up and interrupted him. Bob, we made it to the islands. You made it past the Bermuda Triangle. I was a little worried, but wow. Zoey smiled. She looked like herself again, and Bob felt the relief flood over him that she was okay. How did you do it, Bob? Did you keep the helm at 29 degrees due east? Did you do a slow release of the sails to keep a careful pace? Did you set the compass down and shift the arrow slightly off true north to navigate? Bob looked around at the crew, and up at Pequeño Pedro and Colossus Klaus, who were working to get the ship moving forward again. He tried to call Polly the Pigeon to fly to his shoulder, but Polly ignored him. He finally looked back at Zoey, who was eager to hear how he made it past the Bermuda Triangle. Bob the Bad Pirate paused a second more, and then said,
As it turns out, Zoey, we found a shortcut.
With that, Bob hobbled away as Zoey stood confused, looking at the barrels scattered across the deck, and the frayed ropes, and the water pooled up in wooden crevices. While Bob walked forward, the sky grew red behind the nearing islands, and the smell of adventure washed back over the ship, leaving everyone with the hopeful expectation of a new and glorious day.
And if you're wondering where we're going, truth is I'm just as scared as you. But I know fear won't overwhelm me, 'cause I will face that fear with you.
Hello, Fable.
Hi, Cody.
Have you ever gotten lost anywhere?
Definitely not as much as Bob the Bad Pirate and his crew got lost in the Bermuda Triangle, but
Yeah.
in conversations, mainly, yeah,
Okay, yeah.
definitely.
Would you say you're lost in this conversation?
Not really.
Okay,
I
good.
can understand what's going on.
Okay, perfect. So, going back to the episode, what do you think of the physics of their escape from the whirlpool? Because I've had some questions from my own kids about whether or not what happened was possible.
I think my main thing is that must be a very strong boat.
I agree.
Survive all of that.
Look, it's the best ship in the sea, as they say. It's the fastest ship, so it's a good boat.
I thought it was really funny when they sang the Bermuda Triangle song, even though it was short.
Yes.
That was my favorite part.
You know what they say, what all kids' podcasts need is a little bit of metal.
Yep.
That's what they all say. So, yeah, no.
Mix it up a little.
You got to mix it up, exactly. What did you think about Bob's song to the crew as they got lost?
I think that was also a really good song. I liked the meaning behind it.
Yeah. If you're with the people you love, you're never really lost.
Yeah.
Fable, thank you so much for talking to me. Thank you so much for listening to the episode and for being a light catcher yourself. As a light catcher, would you read the ending credits?
Yeah, for sure. Lightcatchers is created, written, and narrated by Cody, aka CC Kimmel. Sound, design, and mixing by Jonathan Roberts. Podcast produced by Dan Gummel in partnership with Grace Based and Gum Audio. Music written by Cody Kimmel, produced by Hannah Glaver, and mixed and mastered by Reese Zacher. To support this ad-free podcast, download free coloring pages and subscribe to the Lightcatcher magazine. Go to bealightcatcher.com.
Thanks so much, Fable. Bye.
Bye.
Hey, adults. Today's episode might have been a bit of a tearjerker. It was for me when I wrote it. When faced with the very real possibility of getting lost in the Bermuda Triangle, Bob comforts his crew by reminding them that nobody is ever truly lost when they are in a family filled with love and grace. As a father, I hope my kids know that they can face whatever comes their way because I am with them in it. We don't have to know the future to have hope. A connected family committed to the promise of being with each other helps fight against our tendency towards despair and loneliness. Regardless of how your family looks, I hope it can be one filled with love, connection, and grace. A home where nobody feels alone. If you want that for your family, I want to encourage you to go to gracespace.com and enroll in our free course, Blueprints.